In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 best books I've read in recent years. First book I'm going to review at number 5 is Robert T. Kiyosaki's book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This book has been really a landmark amongst the finance books over the last 15-20 years. I've only come across the book recently and I've read it about 2 years ago. It's a fascinating book and I have learned a lot from this book. Essentially, the title Rich Dad, Poor Dad refers to 2 main characters that Robert had as a child. His own father, the poor dad, who worked at a steady job for living, while the rich dad, the father of a friend, ran a multitude of businesses. So most of this book is told from perspective of Robert's learning from his rich dad about how to deal with the money and seeing how his poor dad made huge mistakes. In his point of view, why old advice of getting a good job, saving money, getting out of debt is a bad and obsolete and in fact flawed advice. You don't have to agree with that. Robert also talks about simple ways possible to accumulate assets that provide positive cash flow and difference between assets and liability. That's one of his favorite topics. He talks about investing in asset column rather than liability column. In all his books, if you read even after Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about various columns of investment. He also talks about lots of people who have high salary jobs end up with a lot of liabilities and therefore have a lot of money going out, and in the end the cash flow is out of balance. He also talks about the fact that schools are mostly designed to produce employees and not employers. And schools teach you of a job security, avoid risks. I must warn you that Robert is a kind of polarizing figure. So you either love his work or hate his work, but still it's a fascinating book and must read. At number 4, Matthew's book Happiness. It's not a typical Buddhist library book. It has both flavors of East and West. Matthew was born in France. His mother was a famous painter and his father was a great French intellectual and philosopher. Matthew himself was highly educated. In his early 20s, he left Paris and moved to Darjeeling in India. And that's where he studied with the great Tibetan masters and he developed his skills through the Buddhist philosophy. He's got a very elegant way of writing and it's amazing, and he writes about happiness or well-being. It doesn't come automatically. It's not a gift or a fortune, and it's something that we have to work on it. And to be able to be happy, we have to learn to change ourselves. He writes later in his book that a terrible feeling or emotion or a mood, but an optimal state of being. He also writes that since it may be difficult to change the world, it is always possible to change the way we look at it. It's a great book written by a secular person with colors of Buddhism in it, so it's must read. At number 3, Yuval's book Sapiens. Yuval is one of the most profound thinker and historian of our time. He's won many international awards and his book Sapien has sold so far nearly 12 million copies. I came to know about this book by recommendation from a good friend of mine a few years ago. Since then I've gone on to read all of his books. Basically, Sapien is a fascinating history of us as a species, as a human. A book that takes you through really a journey of our evolution through our history, biology, politics, science, geography, philosophy, theology, spiritualism, and just about anything. It explains our evolution since our birth back 200,000 years ago. Also, a book is written from an angle also that how we got to where we are now and where we are headed. It's incredible book that when we look at where we come from and what we have achieved, from living in caves in small tribes to now building cities around the world and stepping to the moon and planning to visit Mars. So really it takes you through the journey of humans through our evolution, our advancement, to all the way through our history of imperialism, religion, science, capitalism, industrial revolution, up to 21st century technology revolution. And Yuval also at the end looks at possibilities at the end of Homo sapiens. My next book at number 2 is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor was a professor and he was a doctor, and he was taken to, sadly, unfortunately, to concentration camps during the World War II, and a survivor of the camps, and that experience of concentration camps provided him insight into human psychology. And he writes that very elegantly in this book. Frankl believes that it is in human nature to search for a meaning more than anything else. He also believes in, I quote from his book, curing the soul by leading it to find meaning in life. He essentially talks about his idea of that it matters what we expect out of life, but rather what life expects from us. It's really theme that we need to stop thinking about meaning of life in terms of what we get out of life, but think of ourselves as those who were being questioned by life. So he also poses questions from a different angle as well, and where he says what does life expect from us? Means that life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find right answers to his problem. This is a must-read book. It provides a very logical answer to life's hardest questions. And that is, what is the meaning of life? I must recommend this book. And finally, at number 1, Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill is one of the founding fathers of self-motivation movement, really. Think and Grow Rich is the best book ever written on this topic. It was published in 1937, and since then it's never been out of the print. So nearly a century. And book has sold estimated over 100 million copies worldwide. I came to know about this book from a mentor of mine about 13 years ago. And this book had most profound influence on me and has helped me to be the person who I am today. So Dr. Hill basically talks about his principles for success in life. So they basically starts with a desire. He talks that desire is the starting point of all achievement. Then faith is visualization and belief in attainment of desire. And at number 3, auto-suggestions. Basically, how do you influence your subconscious mind? At number 4, specialized knowledge. That person's experience and knowledge. At number 5, imagination. At number 6, organized planning. One of his principles at number 7 is decision. Number 8, persistence. Effectively sustain efforts necessary to reach success. And at number 9, subconscious mind. And finally, the 10th principle is sixth sense. This is the book most of you must have already read or came across one way or the other. And all the modern self-help books or documentaries we see nowadays are all based back of Napoleon's work in 1937. An amazing book. I will definitely recommend this book. All of these books are available both in Kindle and Audible version. If you guys are interested in reading, I'm going to leave the correct links in the description below in the video. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and give your comments. Thank you.